Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 1st of December, 2024, Sunday Night Live. I hope everybody is doing well and has had a great week and a great weekend thus far. You'll notice we've gone all Christmas orientated here. My camera's gone funky again. It shouldn't have, because I did do this earlier, just to be sure. My camera software, for some reason, doesn't always detect my camera. I don't know why. I'm just going to check and make sure that it's on, and it is. So weird. Anyway. So yes, that was my arrangement of Carol of the Bells from last year. And I thought, hey, it's the 1st of December. We've got our Christmas decorations up downstairs and outside in our garden. And so I thought it's time we started beginning to get into the Christmas mood, especially as we have a Christmas songwriting contest on the go at the moment. So I thought, hey, it's important that we maybe just start getting our heads into that groove. So that's why I decided on Carol of the Bells, and we'll be using that throughout the course of this Christmas. I might intersperse it with Silent Night, because I do have an arrangement of that as well, which was originally written for my trio. But I wrote that years ago when I was using Studio One version 2. So we've come a long way since then, that is for sure. So, but I will be doing that over the course of the rest of this month. Now, at the top of the chat, if everybody please scroll back up to the very, very top, you'll see that, yes, there are some retracted messages from me, because I was trying to get the next part all into one message and it wasn't letting me do it. It was very frustrating. So I had to break it up into 3. So if you look at the very top there, at the very start, Billy is the first one in the door, which is great. Well done, Billy. He has his finger hovered over that mouse button. He's just waiting for when I set the show up. And when I set the show up, he's straight in there. So you'll notice I've put what is coming up over the course of this month for shows. So I've broken them down into Sunday Night Live and Songwriting Simplified shows. And then including the Christmas special, and then the Hogmanay show as well. And you'll also see that there's details of the songwriting challenge, when the closing date for that is. So you need to get your entries in by 7 p.m. Central Time on the 18th of December. And then the winner will be announced on the 22nd, which is on the Christmas special show. So that show will be an extra special show. It will be longer than normal. We might do a 90-minute show. We might do a 2-hour show. It kind of just depends. Depends on you guys, how many people we have there, and also, how much chat there is. And the winners will be announced there. Hopefully, I will be able to have Rich on the show with me as well. We'll have to see how things go with him, because I know he's got a lot going on at the moment. So I think he's made it fairly public knowledge that he's moving. So I suppose it all kind of depends upon that as to whether he'll be actually able to be on the show or not. But yes, the winner will be announced either by myself on my own or with Rich with me as well. So please do make note of all of that information. You can copy paste it into your calendars if you wish. If it makes it easier for you to make sure you know what's coming up. So Sunday Night Lives are going to be obviously the 1st, which is tonight, and then the 8th, and then the 22nd, which is the Christmas special, and the 29th, and then we will have just one Songwriting Simplified this month, which would be on the 4th. And that's because the intervening weeks I'm away. I am not going to be in the UK. So I'm going to be I'm not going to be in Scotland, that's for sure. I'll be in Hamburg. And then also I will be down in Weymouth on the south coast of England for my eldest daughter's wedding. Can't miss that. You know, Father of the Bride and all of that. So it's important that I'm there for that. And as I said, the Hogmanay show, for those of you that are, you know nothing about Scottish culture, and I don't expect you to, there's no expectation of that, but here in Scotland we call New Year's Eve Hogmanay. Okay, it's a Gaelic word for it. So, which basically just means the year's end. So, that's what we call it here in Scotland. So, the Hogmanay show will be, of course, on New Year's Eve, and we will start that at 7 p.m. Okay, 7 p.m. Central Time on Hogmanay. And that could be an hour, it could be a 2-hour show. It kind of depends on how much champagne I've had, and all of that. It'll be a celebration. It'll be a party. Excuse me. But we'll also be talking about what we hope for in 2025 as well. So what you hope for Persona's products. So it could be hardware products as well. And also what you would like to see in the future in Studio One in 2025. So be thinking about that, and then we will discuss all of that on the Hogmanay show. And like I said, we'll make that an extended show. Because I don't have to work on New Year's Day, and I don't have to work on the day after New Year's Day either, because it's a public holiday here in Scotland. So yes, we get the 1st and the 2nd off. Why? Because usually here in Scotland, we like to get phenomenally drunk on New Year's Eve, and it usually takes a couple of days to recover. So that would be why we do that. So, like I said, Billy was here first, and then we have Alien Intelligence Agency, who is here as well, who's discussing an issue to do with his mouse cursor, and Ron Figura suggested that it might be that the mouse is perhaps dying. I've seen that happen before. Ron Figura is here, as I said, and we also have Rock Tees, and Dave Barcelo is here, Tony Stringer, Dwayne, and Stephen Wilson are also here. Neil Thompson is here. Don Oliver is here, which is fantastic. Kyle Trajusiak, I hope you're feeling a bit better, my friend. I'm glad you are here. And Rich Cresswell and Bobby Booth and Sean Aaron is here. Good grief, we got a lot of people in here tonight. This is great. We got Chris Manrackner. Hello, my friend. Long time no see. I'm glad you're here, mate. Who else do we have? Roger Beckett is here. Good grief, Roger. Welcome back, my friend. And Gardner99, I think I just saw as well. Harley Bob is here. That's awesome. Aurora's Boring Alice, that's my other Dave friend, is here. He says he's got a question. Rear feet up on the back of keyboard or just keep it flat? For your computer keyboard, kind of up to you, really. I always think, just like a piano, it's always best to keep your wrist nice and level and flat and straight, rather than tilting the keyboards towards yourself. Because if you tilt the keyboard towards yourself, your wrist is going to have a tendency to do that, which means it's going to be kind of extending this way. But you can counteract that with like a wrist support for your keyboard as well. I don't have the feet up on mine, but there are situations and circumstances where you might want to do that. Like certain desks, you might want to have the computer keyboard tilted a little towards you, in which case, yes, put the feet up. Let's see. Mark, old school Funk and Soul. I got the Funk and School kind of spinnerized there. Old school Funk and Soul is here, down in the kind of Midlands area of England. He says the world is internally grateful for Scotland for the song Auld Lang Syne. Absolutely, yes. A Robert Burns poem, by the way. That's what Auld Lang Syne is, and it means for old time's sake. So, quick note on that. When you are singing Auld Lang Syne and you get to the last line of it, don't sing for the sake of Auld Lang Syne, because you are butchering the meaning of it when you do that. So many people make that mistake, because Auld Lang Syne is Scots, Lowland Scots. That's my native language. And that basically means for old time's sake. So you don't need to say for the sake of old time's sake, which is what you do if you say for the sake of Auld Lang Syne. You just drop out the sake and just call it for Auld Lang Syne, for old time's sake. That's what it means. That's the correct. That is the correct way of singing that line. And so many people get that wrong because they don't understand what Auld Lang Syne actually is. Auld Lang Syne is Scots for old time's sake. Okay, so now you've been educated about a very, very important song that is sung throughout the entire world to do with Hogmanay and New Year's Eve. But like I said, it's a Robert Burns poem, and I forget who wrote the music. But yeah, and Robert Burns or Robbie Burns is he's our bard. He's our national poet laureate, basically. Who else do we have here? We got CHDB Music. He says, greetings from Portugal. Portugal, that's awesome. If I have been using things like Ancestry.com and things like that, and I've discovered that some of my mother's side of the family ancestry, we have some roots in Portugal and North Africa on my mother's side. So that was really interesting to find that part out, that the Portuguese part of it actually comes to Portugal from North Africa, which is something I didn't know until I started looking into it. So Portugal is a beautiful country. Let's see. Arami is here. And who else is here? I think I got to the bottom of the list there. No, Auld Lang Syne is not written by Cole Porter. That's hilarious. All right, let's go see what we've got in the chat here. La 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 la. Carl is saying I am special indeed. I think you got that one right. In so many ways. I'm going to go up and see, do we have questions? Rocktease says, I wonder if you could show some examples of the best use of the bend tool. Bend tool is a cool accessory in Studio One. And the best use for the bend tool is actually for quantizing or time aligning audio. So something like drums or something like an acoustic guitar that's got lots of transient information, good, strong, solid transient information in it. And you can use the bend markers and bend tool to basically quantize those audio events. You can totally overdo it. So in Studio One, what you find is that there is basically a bend tool, but there's also an audio bend panel, and I recommend basically using both of these together in conjunction. So if we go over here to Studio One, you'll see here that there is a bend tool, which you'll also see is the number 7 on the top row of your keyboard, where you got the numbers at the top of your keyboard. If you press 7, it will allow you to access the bend tool. Now, everything here pretty much is an instrument. It's not an audio track. So this example here, which is the Carol of the Bells that we heard at the start, is not the best example. But you've also got this audio bend panel. If I open this up, you will see that we have all of these features here for different types of detection. Standard or sensitive. Sensitive is great if you're wanting to make sure that you pick up every subtle little nuance. So even if the transients are quite small, you still want to make sure those get picked up. And then you got the bend marker itself, and you can show them or you can hide them, and you can set the threshold for basically where a bend marker gets placed, or if indeed a bend marker gets placed. Like, you might not want to just have every single transient with a bend marker, which is going to be quantized when you when you hit the apply button. You might not want to grab literally everything because it might actually create some funky little artifacts that you might not like. So what can happen? And I've done this with acoustic guitar. Years and years ago, I was working on an EP with my dad, who is an amazing multi-instrumentalist, but he's mostly a guitarist, plays mandolin and banjo and things like that. But he's mostly a guitarist. But he doesn't always necessarily have great time. I mean, he's a great musician, but he doesn't always necessarily have great time. He has this tendency a little bit to speed up. And so what I wanted to do to counteract that was to basically use the bend markers and the bend tool to basically manually go in and grab those little moments where he's speeding up a little bit and drag them back into time. Now, if you just use the bend tool and you just select everything and you just hit apply, you're going to end up with maybe some not necessarily great results. And that's not necessarily down to Studio One being not very good at this. Although, you know, when you just do it just like that, you could be forgiven for thinking that this is Studio One just not being very good. It's not the case. In this case, what the best use for this bend tool and the bend markers is really basically just grabbing those things that you know just stick out as being off. And you want to move those. And so you can put a bend marker down for those. But as I said, when you use this threshold thing here, you can set it so that it doesn't grab everything. So you don't set it necessarily to 100%. You set it to the ones that are basically, and as you're sliding that thing along, you'll see where bend markers are being placed and when they're not being placed. And then once you're more or less happy with where they are, even if it picks up a few that you don't want, you can just remove those markers. You can right click and remove those markers. It's pretty easy. So you can actually basically only have markers where you want them. And then you can quantize. And you can set, if you set the strength to 100%, it's going to drag everything to the grid. Now, the important thing to bear in mind here is Studio One has a rule about transients. Different DAWs have different rules about transients. Studio One has its own rule, and that is this. It quantizes to the peak of the transient, not the onset of the transient, not the very start of the sound. It's the peak where the sound reaches the highest volume of its potential. The peak of the transient is where it quantizes to. It doesn't quantize at the start of the sound. Because if you think about it, if you think about when a bass drum beater is about to hit the batter head of the kick drum, like that, the sound of my fist, if you were to super slow this down, the sound doesn't reach its peak until all of the weight of the beater is against the head. Then you get the peak of the transient. And that's basically the loudest part of the sound. And so that's what it quantizes rather than the beginning of the beater touching the head, because that's not the loudest part of the sound. So if it were to quantize the other way around, which is how a lot of people want it to do it, because this is how Pro Tools works. Pro Tools, and I think Cubase, they quantize the beginning of the sound rather than the actual fullest peak of the transient. They quantize that onset to that onset part. The problem with that is the peak of the sound actually arrives late when you do that. And for me personally, I think it's much more sensible, much more logical for the transient to strike right where you want it. So the peak of the transient, the loudest part of the transient, which is what is going to be heard, you want that to be on the grid when you're quantizing that. You don't want the onset to be at the start of the grid, because if that's the case, then the peak is going to be late. And I don't think that's correct. So anyway, that's kind of an important caveat to make. So you've got different time stretch modes here. You've got drums, you've got sound, you've got solo, and then you've got tape. Now, tape is a cool little is a cool little format, because what this does is it applies tape sampling technology. So what that means is if the tempo is slowing down, then the pitch will drop as well, just like it would when you slow a tape down. The pitch also drops. Likewise, if the tape speeds up, the pitch goes up. So that's what this tape mode does. Drums is the detection method for high transient sounds. So you want to use this for something like drums, obviously, but something equally percussive like an acoustic guitar. For something like a voice, you want maybe these other ones here. Now this one is monophonic, and then this one here is polyphonic as well. So a piano would work best with this. Vocals, mono vocals would work best with this one here. And then you set the quantize to either quantize everything or slice everything up into its own individual event. So you could have, like across this this tune here, which has got like 210 bars of music, you could have like 600 slices. Each one of those being a separate audio event. You might not want that. Personally, I keep it on quantize, and then you just set the strength. You know, do you want this to quantize literally everything, and do you want it to quantize very, very metronomically to the grid? And then that's what this does. And then, of course, you can group. So you can have like a set of tracks, like different drum tracks, and you can have like a guide, like the kick drum, and then everything else can be quantized to that. That's what this group thing does. And then, so you set this to standard or sensitive, and then you click analyze. I don't have anything selected right now, so that's why that's grayed out. So that's how that works. I can't really show you on this song, and I don't have one loaded up that I could show you. And of course, everything here is pretty much to time. So, and I don't want to mess this song up. So, but that's basically how that works. What I will do is I will do a video, a separate standalone video on the bend markers, because actually bend markers have improved a lot over the years since I first started using them in version 2. So I could do that. I could do a standalone video where I actually go through how to place the bend markers, how to select which ones you want, which ones you don't want. And then, of course, the audio on the event will either be red or green. That's not because red is bad and green is good. It's because red is being compressed, green is being expanded, stretched. So either stretched in time or compressed in time in order to fit the grid. So that's something to bear in mind. And then once you are happy with all of that, you can render it all, and then, because the track kind of goes like this dark transparent kind of color, and you may not want to have it like that, and you may want to just revert it to kind of normal event view. So you can render it all if you're happy with it. So I know that that's not maybe the fullest and best answer, because I've not really demonstrated anything, but I've certainly described how this works. And then the bend tool, you can basically manually move stuff around. You can move certain transients around with the bend tool. So this is great if you want to do some manual shifting, like if there's like, okay, the whole drum track sounds great, but that little snare drum there is just really annoyingly late. You can shift that back. But the thing with drums is if it's all multi-mic'd with stereo overheads, room mics, ambient mics, and everything else, you're going to have to make sure that everything is phase aligned. Otherwise, you'll get phasing problems. So with one single snare drum hit, I don't think it's a big deal. But if you're doing it with a lot of snare drum hits, you got to make sure that everything is phase aligned. Otherwise, it's going to sound a little bit shite, to be honest. So I hope that helps. I know it's not maybe the best answer because I didn't really demo anything, but yeah. I will do a separate video where I go over that a wee bit more. Okay, so Arami had a question here. Can I turn off multiple inserts at the same time? Turn off insults of multiple channels at the same time? Well, you kind of can, and Kyle has the answer here. He says, if you click the blue power button on the inserts label, it will turn off and on all the inserts on that channel. Yes, but you can also turn off everything with one click as well. So we can go back to Studio One for this. So if I go back over here, and actually I needed to have Studio One open before I did that. So see all of these inserts and sends here, and I've got inserts and sends on the main as well. If I click on this button here, it turns off everything. So now we have everything turned off, and then I turn it back on. So this is great if you want to hear your mix raw. So let's maybe drop in at the start of the head. So that's without anything. All right, so that's what this does. So this turns off everything all at once. However, if you just want to turn off everything on one particular channel, there's the individual power buttons on the top of each insert here. So for example, let's say the trumpet here, I could just turn that off. And if I had like lots of plugins, it would work. So if I open up a new song, maybe, let's go back to the start page. And let's go new, and we'll go blank song. I'll go okay. And let's just create a single channel, and we'll make it mono, and we'll just keep it like that. We'll just keep it as one, and we'll go into the mixer, and we'll open up a little bit, and then what we'll do is we'll just grab some stuff, and we'll just drag it on here. We're not really going to do anything with it. We're going to put a gate on there. We're not going to do anything with it. And maybe we'll stick the Pro Q3 on there as well. And maybe we'll have the Pro R in sends. This is all FabFilter stuff, by the way. And then maybe we'll use the DC1A for a bit of extra compression at the end of all of that signal chain. And let's say I've dialed all of these in. And I want to see what it sounds like without. So I can just click on the top here, and it turns all of those off. And then I just turn them back on. Like that. And then if I want to just turn off everything, so that includes the reverb, I can just click this master power button here. And that just turns everything on and off. All right. So I hope that helps. Good question. Let's go back over to the lounge. Good question, that. Arami, by the way. Thank you for that. I mean, turning multiple channels off and on, not just one. Yes. So, yeah, you can do that. You can do that, and you can turn off, like, everything. If you want to turn off selected channels, then you will need to select those selected channels that you want to turn off. So you can hold the shift key down, and you can select channel 1, channel 4, channel 7, 8, 9, and then channel 15, channel 21, 22, 23, 24. And then all of those channels will be considered temporarily grouped. And then all you need to do is just turn off the inserts on one of those, and it will do that for all of those selected channels, because they will be effectively in a temporary group. And so whatever you do to one will happen to all of them. All right. So, but if you just want to switch off everything, then that's what that master power button is for. So select your channels, with holding shift so that they are basically in a temporary group, and then turn off the inserts on one, and it will turn off the inserts on all of those selected channels. So that's a really effective way to do that. So you've got plenty of options. You've got turning off all inserts on one channel, on selected channels, or the master to switch off everything on every insert and every send on everything. Carl says there is no way to select light just 2 and turn those off. On different channels, yes, you can select more than one channel and turn those off. You can totally do that. So, if I was to, let's say, duplicate track complete. So now I've got 2 of those. So what I can do is I can hold shift, select that second channel, and now I'm clicking the inserts on just this one channel, and it's turning on and off the inserts of both of those channels. So if I were to, multiply that out 4 or 5 times, then and see what that's just done. That's just turned all of that into an effects channel. That's not what I wanted to do. So let's do another, and then let's do another one. All right, so we've now got 4, and everything is off at the moment. So let's say I want to turn all of these on. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to select the last one. So now all 4 of those adjacent channels are now selected, and now all of them are on. Well, let's say I only wanted to affect the inserts of channels 1, 3, and 4. So I've got that one selected. I'm going to hold shift, and I'm going to select that one and that one, but I don't want that one. So those 2 I can turn on and off. So I've got channel 1 and channel 4, and I can turn all of those off. But these 2 are not being touched. And so I could do 1 and 3 as well. Except it doesn't want to let me do that. That's annoying. I don't think you can do that. I think you can do all of them, and then let's see. So I can select all of those, turn that one off. Okay, how did I do this just now? You keep the shift held down. That's what I was not doing. So now I've got 1 and 3. And I can turn those inserts on and off as well. So basically what you do is you do shift, click the last one, keep shift held down, deselect those 2. Now I've got 1 and 4. But if I keep the shift down, I can deselect that one and select that one and deselect that one. So now I've just got 1 and 3. And I can toggle those as well. So that works pretty well. So I'm holding control to do that. Sorry, not shift. No, sorry, I am using shift. I am using shift to select those. I'm doing shift and click and then deselect. But let's see if I do, there you go. If I do control, there you go. So there I've got 1, 3, and 4 now. And that's using control. So if I use shift, that's one way. But if I do control, then I can make a temporary group out of however many channels I want. So I could include that one as well. There we go. Control. Matt says, use the control to select individually. There you go. That's the key. That's the key element. And I got to that just at the end there. I'd forgotten all about that, to be fair. So if I had like 30 channels and I just wanted to select channel 1, channel 10, channel 20, and then 22, 24, 25, then I would use control, hold down control and select those, and then I can on off those. That's a very cool little feature. I'd forgotten all about the control. I knew you could do it with shift, but I'd forgotten about control key. So thank you for that. There we go. So I hope that actually helps answer that question. So we got 27 people here, which is awesome. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. If you are finding this all really helpful, then please do hit that like button. We got 25 likes, 27 people watching. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate you all very much. DB says you have to use control to add to select multiple channels. Yes, that's the part that I had forgotten about. With shift, it selects all channels between the first and last you click. Correct. Yeah, I'd forgotten about the control. So that's cool. Dave at Aurora's Boring Alice says, was thinking you can trick transients by swapping phasing on the high-end trigger. Yeah, you can't... with phase issues, you can't really fake fixing that. Well, you can, but you don't get good results, ever. If you have phase issues, you actually have to go and align those. You can't, I mean, there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can, one of the ways, if it's not very far out of phase, you can just use the polarity controls, and you can reverse the polarity of one of those and see if that actually, aligns everything. But otherwise, you're going to have to grab that transient and manually align it with the other one so that it's aligned. Or you can use something like auto align, which is worth investigating. Auto align, I think, is pretty much an industry standard for time aligning things. Mostly used for drums, but I think you could probably use it for other things like guitars if you want, or vocals, backing vocals. Although for vocals there's Vocaline, which is perfect for vocals, because vocals don't have clear, distinct transients necessarily. Whereas something percussive like drums or guitar, you could probably use auto align because there's a very clear, sharp transient that you can use. Whereas Vocaline would be better for vocals. But yeah, with phase issues, there's no way of tricking anything. You actually need to fix the phase problem. Yeah, tricking things, you're just never going to get a good result if you do that. Neil says, I just learned that I got a short but important gig in a couple of weeks. Oh, awesome. I'm glad to hear that. I've not played a gig now since 2020. And that's not because I can't get gigs. I get gigs all the time. I'm just retired from performing. I don't play gigs anymore. I've been playing gigs since I was a kid. I'm nearly 50 years old, and so in terms of music career, I'm not old by any stretch of the imagination. But the vast majority of those nearly 50 years has been spent performing. I've been performing since I was about this tall, because I come from a performing arts family, and so all my life has been on stage and performing and stuff like that. And it's just a choice. It's a decision I made. I just decided I didn't want to play gigs anymore because whilst the actual performing aspect is a lot of fun and I get a lot out of it and I enjoy it, there's definitely drawbacks. One of those is setting up your gear, then taking down your gear and not getting home until 4 o'clock in the morning, and then having to get up, to get my kids to school or certainly when they were younger, getting my kids to school, or having to get up early to make sure that my kids got out the door so that they could go to school themselves. So, there was always that. And so that meant that, if I'm playing 3, 4, 5 nights a week, I'm not at home with my wife. I'm not at home with the kids when they get home from school. So I don't really see my kids that much. And I don't see them until like the weekend, by which time I'm already exhausted. So I'm not much fun for them. And I'm not getting a lot of quality with my wife and, building our marital relationship. So for those reasons and more besides, like the fact that we had a global pandemic, which meant there were no gigs, and I couldn't afford to keep a band anymore because my band were my employees. I couldn't afford that anymore. I decided to call it a day on performing. And instead, what I do is I do studio work. I work with people all over the world. And I play on their records. And I don't ever have to leave this room to do that. I can work with somebody in Israel. I can work with somebody in Los Angeles. I can work with somebody in Mexico, Portugal, Spain, wherever. And I'm never leaving this room. And it's decent money. And because I work for Personas as my day job, and that's a full-time day job, I can take whatever gigs I want, when I want them, if I want them. And I can take recording jobs again and mixing jobs if and when I want them. I don't have to be taking everything under the sun just to, keep a roof over my head. So there's that. And also, with having a day job, I can charge a lot more for those side jobs. And I do. If somebody wants me to come and play a gig for them, then, it's going to cost them. Because they're not just paying for me and my talent, they're paying for me, my talent, my time, and my time being away from my family. So, all of that comes at a high price. Okay, let's see. What else do we have here? Neil says, my experience is in the opposite. I've wasted way too much of my life not using my gift of music, and I need to make up for that. Okay, well, there you go. And I'm really happy that you've got a gig. I hope it really goes well for you. And I hope it opens up doors for other stuff as well. Army says, like using a percussion loop to rhythmically affect a pad sound. Okay. How does one set up Shaper Box audio envelope follower inside Studio One? I have never heard of Shaper Box. I will be honest. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know how you do that. However, one thing I would recommend, even if you're not using Shaper Box, if you're going to use one sound to trigger another sound, you could use, if it's MIDI, you might want to use something like the gate plugin and use the MIDI trigger, because you can set that to a specific pitch, specific MIDI note, and then you could use whatever that MIDI note is to trigger that other sound. So you could do something like that, or you could sidechain. It depends what you want to do. Let's see. Sean Carr says, when I've edited drums before, I moved all of the tracks together so they stayed in phase. It was pretty much just kick and snare and not huge movement, so it worked out well. Hope that made sense. Yes, absolutely, it does make sense. And certainly, I think in most cases, you can certainly manually slip edit most of your transients, and you can eyeball them to make sure that they are more or less in phase, and then you can finesse it from there with something like auto align. That would work just as well. Russell Harris is in the house. Welcome, my friend. I'm glad you're here. He says, hello, my Studio One brothers and sisters. Awesome. Thank you, Russell, for joining me. I appreciate it. We got Rhythm, who's here as well. He's in St. Lucia. My God. This is awesome. We got people from all over the planet here, all over the globe, because the Earth is not flat. Just Bob has been here. He says, "Gotta run. Dinner's ready. Stay safe and warm out there." Yes, actually, it's quite mild here in Scotland. It has been super duper cold. Not anymore. It's actually really mild out there. Sean is using the bend markers, not slip editing. Yeah, you can use the bend markers definitely to do your phase alignment for sure. And occasionally you get people complaining they just don't like the fact that the bend markers start, you know, they are targeting the peak, as I said earlier, rather than the onset of the transient. And that annoys some people because they want it to be, you know, the onset of the sound, which makes no sense to me. And I believe that it doesn't make any sense to the developers either, which is why they did it that way. But yeah, some people get really annoyed by it, but all you have to do is just compensate for that fact. That's what I think. So right after this show, we will have the PreSonus Studio One meetup in New Orleans, which will be hosted by Billy Morgan himself. So if you want to carry on the conversations that we've had here and talk more about Studio One and how we use Studio One, and maybe even talk about, hey, what would we like to see added to Studio One in 2025? Because remember, in 2025, that's when the new eagerly anticipated new release cycle starts in 2025. So what do we think we're going to see in these new feature drops? Yes, you can do the meetups on your phone. Absolutely low end. Yes. All you'll need really is the Zoom app. You can download the Zoom app from your Google Play or Mac apps, iOS App Store, whichever it is that you're using for your phone, and you can log in from there. So we have about 8 minutes left. Of the show. Rock T says, "I don't do a gig now unless it's 2,000 aside." Wow. Yes. Yeah. For me personally, I don't go out and do a gig for less than £200. And the cool thing about that is that means two things. I don't get calls from, you know, bands that are maybe less professional. That's the first thing, because they're not going to pay me that much, because they probably don't have the budget to pay me that much. And that's okay. I've been playing for long enough where, you know, I have a lot of experience as a performer. And so I think, you know, I can be up in that next bracket. So I prefer to work with musicians who are professionals. And so that's the first thing. It means I don't get gigs from semi-professionals. Oh, you mean 200 watts? Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I don't take gigs with non-professional musicians. And that's not because I look down my nose at people that are amateurs and people that are, you know, hobbyists. No, that's not it at all. It's just that I've been at the top of the professional game for most of my adult life, and you know, I want to work with people that are good, and I want to work with people who are going to stretch me as a performer. So that's why. And also, I think I'm worth more than 150. I'm worth more than £200 per gig. So that's why. Because you're paying for not just me, but you're paying for my skills, my talent, and my experience. And that's definitely worth more than £200. Dave, that's just funny. Do they play music in New Orleans? No, they probably don't. They probably have nothing to do with like jazz music and blues music at all in New Orleans. Nope. That's funny. All right, so we've still got 27 people here with like 5 minutes left to go. That's mental. I'm going to take a quick look back up and see if I've missed any questions. Neil says it's playing just 3 songs opening for an act that will draw a good crowd, including some music community connected people. Probably no pay, but still worth doing. Maybe. These days, when it comes to exposures, I won't go out and play a gig for anything less than 200 exposures, to be honest. If you know what I mean. Yeah, I mean, I get offered a lot. People phone me up a lot and say, hey, will you come and play X gig? It would be great for you it'll be great for your career. It'll give you exposure to, supposed music industry bigwigs. I'm just like, no. No, say, but there's going to be industry people there. No, I'm a professional. I don't play for free unless I'm playing a charity event. If I'm playing a charity event, that's different. In that case, I'm not playing for free. I am donating my salary for the night to the charity. So that's a totally different thing. But yeah, if people say to me, hey, there's going to be industry people there, will you come and pay? We can't pay you, but will you come and play? And I'm like, sorry, mate, no. Because, I've been there and done that, and I've played those kind of things in the past when I was, just beginning to work as a full-time musician, not just a part-time. When I was working full-time, when I was just beginning to work full-time, I did play those kind of gigs, and, they were all full of promise. They were just like, oh, but there's going to be industry people there. We can't afford to pay you, and but there are industry people there, and, you'll get exposure to them. There were no industry people there. So, I went out and played a night for no money. No, I don't do that. So I learned the hard way about doing those kind of gigs. Now, if it was an event where I was promoting my album, or I had the opportunity to open like Neil has here, where he has the opportunity to open for another band, but hopefully he has the opportunity to get his press kit out there and his EPK, and to get, little cards with digital downloads of his music that he can give away and get people clicking on to his website, clicking onto his Bandcamp and stuff like that, where he has his music that people can buy. Absolutely. Because, what he doesn't make in the gig, he can recoup in, people going through to his site and buying his stuff direct from his site. So, stuff like that. That's different. You're using the free gig as a promotional opportunity. That's different. But if somebody's just like, please play this gig because it will give you exposure. No, I don't take those. Because, it doesn't pay for groceries, it doesn't pay my rent, doesn't pay my gas and electricity bill, doesn't pay my mortgage, doesn't keep a roof over my head. So no, I'm not going to take those. So there you go. Neil says, the thing is, as it stands, barely anybody knows who we are. Plus, it is at the local arts community building in the small town near me. We're not playing for a scammy business. There you go. So yeah, if you're playing like an arts community center and you're trying to drum up support for what you do, it's kind of different. But I would say on that point, tread carefully, because, even though they're not a scammy business, it's a community arts center, they can still take advantage of you. And once you start saying, oh, sure, I'll play this free event at your community arts center for sure, raise awareness of the Community Arts Center and get some investment from them, they can just end up taking advantage of that. And they'll say, oh, Neil will come and play at this event because he wants the exposure. And they won't pay you anything for future events. So it's a good thing to build a relationship with a venue like an local community arts center, for sure, because that is a potential gig venue that you want to build a relationship with so that you can hire their event space, their stage, their their hall. You can hire their hall because you've built a good relationship with them. So that's a good thing to do. Build a relationship with a local venue so that you can get preferential treatment when you want to hire that place out for a gig, for example. So yeah, the whole community arts center thing, that's a different thing. If you're wanting to, help them promote the arts center and get footfall through the door and get investment into the community arts center, that's a different thing. Plus, you can use that as an opportunity to promote what you do and, get the audience interested in your music and connect with you online. So that's what you really want to do. You want to get your audience to connect with you. So that, when you do play a gig in another venue, they will go to that venue and, there'll be real actual money involved. Plus, they might actually buy your records as well. So there we go. We have reached the end. Yeah, just be careful about, free gigs and stuff like that. Kyle, that's just too funny. Rock T says, I spent the first 2 years playing for beer. And Kyle says, did the beer at least applaud? That's really good. All right, folks, we will end it there. The New Orleans Studio One meetup starts immediately after this music to play us out with a little bit more of Carol of the Bells, although that title is copyrighted, so I'm not really supposed to call it that. So I'm going to call it Jeff's Christmas song. So I will see you guys on the next show. I've actually forgotten when that is. I need to scroll all the way back up to remind myself what we're doing next. So on the 4th, this Wednesday will be Songwriting Simplified, and that will be the one and only Songwriting Simplified show of this month. So therefore, it will be the last Songwriting Simplified show of the year, in fact, before we get to the Christmas special and Hogmanay, all of that stuff. So make sure you've got all of those dates saved so you know what show is coming up and when. I've done that so that I don't forget as well. And until then, folks, I will see you all over at the New Orleans Studio One meetup. Thank you, everybody, and good night.